Hello, and welcome back to Infidelity Tales Lab. We're grateful for each view and comment. Tell us, from which country or city are you watching today? We enjoy connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Man in the Shadows. Russell Harmon watched the rain streak down the windows of his penthouse, the city lights below blurring into watercolor smears. At 52, he carried himself with the coiled tension of a predator. His salt and pepper hair was precisely cut, his expensive suit tailored to hide the strength he maintained with religious dedication. To the outside world, he was a brilliant architect who had risen from nothing to build Harmon Designs into one of the most prestigious firms on the West Coast. What few knew was the calculated fury that had driven him for the past 6 years. His phone buzzed. The screen displayed a text from Dominic, his personal security specialist. Surveillance updated. Sending files now. Russell's laptop chimed with an incoming email. He clicked through a series of photographs. His ex-wife Vanessa stepping out of her Mercedes. Her lover, now husband, Lawrence Paxton, escorting her into their lake house. And his son Nathaniel, now 22, arriving at his university apartment. The images were time-stamped less than an hour ago. For 6 years, Russell had monitored their movements, learning their patterns, their weaknesses, their secrets. He hadn't missed a single detail of their lives, while they believed he had moved on after the divorce that had stripped him of half his assets and, temporarily, his reputation. Mr. Harmon, his assistant's voice came through the intercom. Thomas Westfield is here to see you. Send him in, Russell replied, closing the surveillance files. Thomas entered, a burly former military man who now handled Russell's more delicate operations. It's confirmed. Paxton made contact with Diaz yesterday. Russell's expression remained impassive, though his eyes darkened. So, they're moving forward. Appears so. Money changed hands. From what we gathered, they're planning something around Nathaniel's graduation next month. Russell nodded slowly. Then we accelerate our timeline. Contact Simone and tell her we're implementing Protocol Chimera immediately. That's moving things up by 3 weeks, Thomas observed. They forced my hand. Russell turned back to the window. They're planning to use my son against me, Thomas. That's a mistake they won't live to regret. After Thomas left, Russell opened his safe and removed a leather-bound journal. Inside were meticulously detailed plans, contingencies for contingencies that he had refined over years. The pages contained his masterwork, not an architectural marvel, but an intricate design for destruction. He flipped to a page marked with Nathaniel's name. His son had graduated high school when the divorce was still raw, choosing to live primarily with his mother. Russell had maintained a relationship with him, though the boy had grown increasingly distant, manipulated by Vanessa's poisonous whispers. Still, blood was blood, and Russell had never stopped watching over him. His phone rang, his son's ringtone. Nathaniel, he answered, his voice warming slightly. Dad, I just wanted to make sure you're still coming to my graduation party next month. Russell detected the hesitation in his son's voice. I wouldn't miss it. Are you all right? Yeah, just stressed about finals. Mom's going all out with the party planning. I'm sure she is, Russell replied, keeping his tone neutral. I'll see you next week for dinner? Sure. I gotta go. Bye, Dad. The call ended, but Russell stared at the phone for a long moment. His son was hiding something. The tension in his voice betrayed him. Russell returned to his journal, making a notation beside his son's name. Whatever game Vanessa and Lawrence were playing, they had dragged Nathaniel into it. For that alone, he would ensure their downfall was absolute. The rain intensified outside, thunder rolling across the sky like distant artillery. Russell smiled. He had always found that he did his best work during storms. Chapter 2. Broken Vows. 6 years earlier, Russell Harmon's firm had just won the contract for the new Pacific Arts Center, the crowning achievement in his 20-year career. The celebration dinner at their estate had gone perfectly, with city officials and investors toasting his vision. As the guests departed, Russell loosened his tie, savoring the victory. You were magnificent tonight, his wife Vanessa said, sliding her hands around his waist from behind. At 42, she remained stunning, sleek blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, and the poised confidence that had first attracted him when they met at a charity gala 15 years ago. "We make a good team," he replied, turning to kiss her. It was true. Vanessa's social connections and charm had opened doors that his talent alone might never have accessed. "I'm going to check on Nathaniel," she said. "Don't wait up. You deserve your rest." Russell nodded, pouring himself a celebratory whiskey. Their son, then 16, had made a brief appearance at the dinner before retreating to his room, citing homework. Russell was proud of the boy's dedication to his studies. Later that night, unable to sleep from the evening's excitement, Russell wandered the house. Passing his home office, he noticed the light on. Thinking he'd left it on himself, he pushed the door open and froze. Vanessa was there, hunched over his computer, copying files onto a flash drive. She startled at his entrance, her expression shifting from shock to calculated calm. "What are you doing?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "Just sending some photos from the party to my sister," she lied smoothly. Russell stepped forward, taking the flash drive from her hand. "My design files aren't party photos, Vanessa." Her face hardened. "You wouldn't understand. It's just business." "Whose business?" "Lawrence Paxton's." The name tasted bitter on his tongue. Paxton Development was his firm's chief competitor, and rumors of their unethical practices had circulated for years. The slight widening of her eyes confirmed his suspicion. "How long?" he demanded. "Russell, how long?" Vanessa straightened, dropping the pretense. 3 years. And it's more than business, if that's what you're asking. The betrayal hit him like a physical blow. 3 years. While he had worked 18-hour days building their future, she had been sharing his bed and his secrets with another man. "Get out," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "This is my house too," she countered. "And when this is over, I'll have half of everything, including your precious company." Russell stepped closer, his control slipping. "You have 30 minutes to pack essentials. Anything you leave behind will be burned." "Don't threaten me," she hissed. "I have copies of everything I need. Lawrence already has preliminary designs for your art center. By the time you've sorted out this mess, Paxton Development will have submitted an alternate proposal at half your cost." The calculated nature of the betrayal made his blood run cold. Does Nathaniel know his mother is a thief and a whore? The slap came fast, but Russell caught her wrist before it connected. 30 minutes, Vanessa. Then I call the police." She wrenched her arm away. "This isn't over. You built your success on my connections. Without me, you'd still be designing strip malls in some backwater town." 29 minutes, he replied, his face impassive. When she left, taking Nathaniel with her, Russell didn't unleash his rage. Instead, he channeled it, focusing it like a laser. That night, he called Thomas Westfield, a security consultant he had met through a client, and initiated the first step of what would become an elaborate plan. By morning, he had changed all his passwords and security protocols. By the end of the week, he had filed for divorce and begun a counter-offensive against Paxton Development's attempt to steal his design. The divorce was ugly. Vanessa claimed emotional abuse, painting Russell as a controlling workaholic. Her affair with Lawrence Paxton became public, but she spun it as a relationship that began only after she left Russell. The courts awarded her half of their assets, though Russell's legal team managed to protect his company from her claims. Within 6 months, she had married Paxton, taking Nathaniel to live in their lakeside mansion. The boy, confused and angry, sided primarily with his mother, believing her version of events. Russell didn't fight it. Instead, he maintained a civil relationship with his son while watching, waiting, and planning. Paxton Development's attempt to undercut the Art Center bid failed when Russell revealed to the selection committee that their proposal contained stolen elements. However, the damage to some of his professional relationships was done. Certain doors that had been opened to him, doors that Vanessa's connections had unlocked, closed abruptly. Rather than breaking him, this setback crystallized his resolve. Russell rebuilt his firm's reputation project by project, all while meticulously documenting the continuing unethical practices of Paxton Development and his ex-wife's involvement. He knew that simple exposure wouldn't be enough. Lawrence Paxton had political connections that had shielded him from consequences before. No, Russell needed something definitive. something that would destroy them so completely that recovery would be impossible. And so he waited, gathering information, building resources, and preparing for the moment when they would make a mistake he could exploit. That moment came 5 years after the divorce, when Lawrence Paxton secured the contract for a controversial luxury resort development through methods that reeked of bribery and coercion. Russell finally had the leverage he needed. The endgame could begin. Chapter 3: The Invitation. Nathaniel Harmon stared at the graduation invitation in his hands, his stomach knotting with anxiety. The embossed card announced his master's degree celebration at his mother and stepfather's lakeside estate, now just 3 weeks away. He had already sent one to his father, but his mother had insisted he personally deliver a second invitation. "Your father might miss the mail," she had said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "And we want to make sure he comes, don't we?" Nathaniel knew better. In the 6 years since the divorce, he had watched his mother's hatred for his father grow, even as she pretended to have moved on. At first, he had believed her version of events, that his father was controlling, that he had driven her away with his ambition and coldness. But as he matured, he'd begun to see the manipulation in her narrative. The penthouse doorman greeted him with a nod. "Mr. Harmon is expecting you, Nathaniel." The elevator ride to the top floor gave him time to compose himself. His relationship with his father had improved over the last year, as he had started to recognize the inconsistencies in his mother's stories. Still, there remained a distance between them that Nathaniel didn't know how to bridge. His father opened the door before he could knock. Russell Harmon's observant eyes missed nothing as he welcomed his son inside. "You look tired," Russell noted, guiding him to the living room where a light lunch was already prepared. "Finals," Nathaniel explained, setting down the invitation. "Mom wanted me to make sure you got this." Russell picked up the card, studying it with an unreadable expression. "I received the one you sent last week." "I know," she insisted. They ate in silence for a moment before Russell spoke again. "You've seemed anxious lately. Is everything all right?" Nathaniel hesitated. His father had always been perceptive, a trait that had made lying to him as a child nearly impossible. "Just graduation stress." "And," Russell prompted. "And nothing," Nathaniel replied too quickly. His father set down his fork. "Son, whatever is happening, you can tell me." For a moment, Nathaniel almost confessed everything. The arguments he'd overheard between his mother and Lawrence, the strange men who had been meeting with his stepfather, the cryptic comments about finally settling scores. But fear held him back. His mother's warnings echoed in his mind. "Your father would use anything against us. He's never forgiven me, and he never will." "It's nothing," Nathaniel insisted. "Just academic pressure." Russell didn't push further, but his eyes reflected concern. "I'm proud of you, Nathaniel. A master's in environmental engineering at 22 is no small achievement." "Thanks, Dad." The simple praise warmed him more than he wanted to admit. As lunch concluded, Russell walked him to the door. "You know you can always stay here if you need to, right? Your room is always ready." Nathaniel nodded, though they both knew he hadn't stayed overnight since the divorce. "I should go. I promised Mom I'd help with some party arrangements." As he turned to leave, his father placed a hand on his shoulder. "Nathaniel, if you ever feel unsafe or pressured, call me immediately, day or night." Something in his father's tone made Nathaniel look up sharply. "Why would I feel unsafe?" "Just a father's concern," Russell replied. "The offer stands." Driving away from his father's building, Nathaniel couldn't shake the feeling that his father knew more than he was saying. He checked his rearview mirror, half expecting to see someone following him, but the street behind him was clear. Back at the penthouse, Russell examined the invitation more carefully. The heavy paper concealed a nearly imperceptible thickness in one corner. Using a letter opener, he carefully slit the edge and extracted a miniature tracking device no larger than a grain of rice. "Amateurs," he murmured, placing the device in a small metal box on his desk. He then texted Thomas, "They're getting sloppy. Bring Simone for dinner tonight." The reply came immediately, 7 p.m. "She has updates." Russell smiled. Vanessa always had underestimated him. Using their son as an unwitting courier was exactly the kind of miscalculation he had been waiting for. The graduation party was clearly intended as a trap, but they had no idea they were walking into one of his own design. He opened his laptop and activated a program that displayed a three-dimensional model of the Paxton Lakeside estate. Every room, every entrance and exit, every security measure was meticulously detailed, the result of years of surveillance and intelligence gathering. Russell zoomed in on the rear terrace overlooking the lake, where the graduation celebration would be held. Perfect sight lines, multiple access points, minimal coverage from the property's security cameras. If Vanessa and Lawrence wanted to stage their endgame there, they couldn't have chosen a better location for his purposes. His phone buzzed with a message from an unlisted number. Diaz has recruited 2 more. Ex-military. Armed. So they weren't just planning character assassination or financial ruin. They wanted him dead. Russell felt a cold calm settle over him. He had anticipated this, prepared for it, but the confirmation that they would go to such lengths, potentially exposing Nathaniel to danger in the process, hardened his resolve. He replied, "Proceed with Protocol Chimera. All assets in place by graduation." Russell closed the model and turned to his window, gazing out at the city he had helped shape. In 3 weeks, everything would change. In 3 weeks, Vanessa and Lawrence would learn the true meaning of vengeance. Chapter 4. Blood Ties. Nathaniel couldn't sleep. The lake house felt oppressive despite its spacious rooms and panoramic views. He sat on his bed, turning his phone over in his hands, contemplating calling his father. The conversation they'd had that afternoon had left him unsettled. A knock at his door startled him. His mother entered without waiting for a response, something she'd done since he was a child. Vanessa Paxton looked immaculate even at midnight, her silk robe perfectly draped over her slender frame. "Still up, darling? Worried about the ceremony?" She sat beside him, stroking his hair as she had when he was young. "Just thinking," he replied, pulling away slightly. She noticed the withdrawal. "You saw your father today." It wasn't a question, but Nathaniel answered anyway. "Yes, I delivered the invitation as you asked." "And how was he?" Her tone was light, but her eyes were intent. "The same as always. Concerned about my finals." Nathaniel kept his response vague, unwilling to share the details of their conversation. Vanessa smiled. "He always was good at appearances. Your father could seem concerned while plotting your downfall." She patted his knee. "I've never told you everything about our divorce, Nathaniel. I wanted to protect you." "Mom, it's been 6 years. I don't need—" "He threatened me." She interrupted, her voice hardening. "When I told him I was leaving, he said he would destroy me, take you away, leave me with nothing. The only reason I got anything in the settlement was because I had documentation of his threats." Nathaniel frowned. This contradicted what he'd pieced together over the years. "Dad's never spoken badly about you to me." "Of course not. He's too smart for that." Vanessa stood, moving to the window. "Lawrence and I have been patient, giving him time to move on, but your father has been undermining our business, spreading rumors, trying to ruin what we've built." "What does this have to do with my graduation?" Nathaniel asked, a chill running through him. Vanessa turned, her expression softening. "Nothing, sweetheart. I just want you to understand why things might be tense at your party. Lawrence and your father have some business matters to resolve. That's all." She kissed his forehead before leaving, but her reassurance did nothing to ease Nathaniel's growing unease. He waited until her footsteps faded down the hall before slipping out of his room and moving silently toward Lawrence's study. The house was quiet except for the gentle lapping of lake waters against the shore. The study door was ajar, voices murmuring inside. Nathaniel positioned himself in the shadows, listening. "Can't trust the boy," a man's voice he didn't recognize was saying. "He's too close to his father." "Nathaniel knows nothing," Lawrence's confident baritone replied. "Vanessa has made sure of that. He'll play his part without even realizing it. And if he doesn't, then he becomes collateral damage. Either way, Russell Harmon ends at that party." Nathaniel's blood ran cold. He must have made a sound, because the voices suddenly stopped. He quickly retreated down the hall, slipping into a bathroom just as the study door opened fully. Heart pounding, Nathaniel waited until the footsteps passed before returning to his room. His hands shook as he reached for his phone, but he stopped himself from calling his father. If his room was being monitored, and now he suspected it might be, any warning would alert his mother and Lawrence. Instead, he texted his university roommate, "Need to crash at your place tomorrow. Don't tell anyone I'm coming." He needed time away from this house to think, to plan. Whatever was happening, he had just over 3 weeks to figure it out. The next morning, Nathaniel told his mother he needed to return to campus to work on final projects. She seemed reluctant to let him go, but didn't stop him. As he drove away, he noticed a black SUV pulling out behind him, maintaining a discreet distance. He was being followed. Rather than heading to campus, Nathaniel drove to a crowded shopping mall, parking in a massive lot and quickly losing himself in the throng of shoppers. He bought a prepaid phone with cash, then found a quiet corner in a coffee shop to make a call. "Westfield Security," a woman's voice answered. "I need to speak with Thomas Westfield," Nathaniel said, his mouth dry. "Tell him it's Nathaniel Harmon." There was a pause, then Thomas came on the line. "Nathaniel, this is unexpected. I need to see my father, but I can't go to his penthouse. I'm being followed. Where are you now?" "Bridgeport Mall, North Entrance." "Stay there. I'll have someone pick you up in 20 minutes. Red cap, holding a Starbucks cup. They'll approach you with the phrase, 'Professor Wilson sends his regards.'" The call ended. Nathaniel sat back, overwhelmed by how quickly Thomas had taken control of the situation. He hadn't seen much of his father's head of security over the years, but the man's efficient response suggested this wasn't an unusual occurrence. Exactly 20 minutes later, a woman in a red baseball cap approached his table. "Professor Wilson sends his regards," she said calmly. Nathaniel followed her to a service corridor and out to a loading dock where a delivery van waited. Inside, to his surprise, was his father. "Dad," he managed, climbing in. Russell's face was grim. "You're not hurt?" "No, I'm fine, but we need to move," the woman interrupted. "The SUV's team is searching the mall." As the van pulled away, Nathaniel turned to his father. "How did you know I was being followed?" "Because I've been having you protected for the past year," Russell replied evenly. "Ever since Lawrence Paxton made contact with a man named Diaz." "Who's Diaz?" "A fixer who specializes in making problems disappear permanently." Russell's eyes were hard. "I believe your mother and Lawrence have hired him to kill me, and they plan to use your graduation party to do it." Nathaniel felt sick. "Last night, I overheard Lawrence talking." Russell nodded, unsurprised. "Tell me everything you heard." As Nathaniel recounted the conversation, his father's expression grew darker. When he finished, Russell was silent for a long moment. "They're more desperate than I thought," he finally said. "And more reckless, involving you this way. What do they want? Why would they do this?" Russell studied his son. "How much do you know about Paxton Development's Oceanside Resort project?" "Just that it's Lawrence's biggest development. Mom said it would make them hundreds of millions. What she didn't tell you is that the project is built on stolen land using fraudulent permits. My firm discovered this while researching a neighboring site. If that information became public, Lawrence would face criminal charges and financial ruin." "And Mom," Russell's expression softened slightly, "your mother is complicit. She used connections from our marriage to help secure the permits." Nathaniel struggled to process this. "What are we going to do?" "First, we get you somewhere safe. Then, we proceed with the plan I've been developing for the past 5 years." "You've been planning for this?" "I've been planning for everything," Russell replied. "Your mother and Lawrence have underestimated me from the beginning. That ends now." The van turned onto a private airstrip where a small jet waited. "This will take you to a secure location," Russell explained. "Simone here will stay with you." "What?" "No, I want to help," Nathaniel protested. "You can help by staying alive and out of their reach," Russell said firmly. "If they can't use you as bait, they'll have to adjust their plans, which gives us an advantage. But the graduation will proceed as scheduled. They'll assume you're still playing your part, and that will be their final mistake." As they approached the plane, Nathaniel grabbed his father's arm. "Dad, I'm sorry. I should have seen what was happening sooner." Russell embraced his son for the first time in years. "None of this is your fault. But I promise you, when it's over, they will never threaten you again." Watching the plane take off, Russell's phone buzzed with a message from Thomas. Diaz's men lost the trail. Proceeding to Phase 2. Russell texted back, "Accelerate timeline." You're getting desperate. Chapter 5. The Conspirators. Lawrence Paxton slammed his fist on his desk, rattling the crystal decanter. "What do you mean you lost him? He's a college student, not a trained operative." The man standing before him, Diaz, remained impassive. He knew he was being followed. That suggests preparation, and the way he disappeared suggests help. Vanessa paced the study, her heels clicking sharply on the hardwood floor. "Russell, it has to be. He's poisoned Nathaniel against us." Her voice quavered between rage and fear. "We don't know that," Lawrence cautioned, though his tone lacked conviction. "The boy might just be spooked. He could have overheard something. Either way, he's compromised," Diaz stated flatly. "We need to adjust the plan." Lawrence refilled his whiskey glass. "How?" "The entire setup depends on using the boy to lure Russell to the party." "He'll still come," Vanessa said with sudden certainty. "Even if he suspects a trap, he won't be able to resist the opportunity to confront us. That's who he is. He needs to win, to dominate." Diaz nodded slowly. "Then we continue as planned, but with increased security. I'll bring in 2 more men." After Diaz left, Vanessa collapsed onto the leather sofa. "This is falling apart, Lawrence. If Russell has turned Nathaniel against us." "It changes nothing," Lawrence interrupted. "In fact, it might be better this way. If the boy isn't here, there's less chance of collateral damage. Russell comes to the party, our men take care of him, and we're free. The Oceanside project continues, and we never have to look over our shoulders again." Vanessa wasn't convinced. "You don't know Russell like I do. He doesn't walk into traps. He sets them. He's an architect, not a criminal mastermind," Lawrence scoffed. "And he's alone. We have resources, connections." "So does he," Vanessa warned. "Don't underestimate him. When I left, he said something. Not a threat, more like a promise. He said, 'You'll never see it coming, but when it does, you'll know why.'" Lawrence came to sit beside her, taking her hands in his. "Listen to me. Russell has spent years trying to undermine us, and he's failed. Yes, he's discovered some irregularities with the Oceanside permits, but without proof, it's just speculation. After the graduation party, he won't be a problem anymore." Vanessa leaned against him, drawing comfort from his confidence. "I just want this to be over. I want to stop looking over my shoulder, wondering what he's planning." "Soon," Lawrence promised, kissing her forehead. "Very soon." In a hotel across the city, Diaz met with his team, now 5 men with military and private security backgrounds. "The situation has changed," he explained. "The son is out of the picture, possibly working with the father. Makes our job harder," one of the men noted. "The boy was our insurance." "We adapt," Diaz replied coolly. "Harmon will still attend the party. His pride won't allow him to stay away. When he arrives, Coleman and Peters will escort him to the boathouse for a private conversation with Paxton. That's where we take care of him. And if he doesn't come quietly," Diaz's smile was cold, "then we create a distraction. A tragic accident involving the boat dock perhaps, with multiple casualties. Such a shame during a graduation celebration." The men nodded, understanding the implication. Collateral damage was acceptable as long as the primary target was eliminated. "One more thing," Diaz added. "I want patrols around the property perimeter starting now. If Harmon is planning something, I want to know." As his team dispersed, Diaz remained at the table, studying a photograph of Russell Harmon. There was something about the man's eyes that troubled him, a calculating intelligence that suggested he was always several moves ahead. For the first time in his career, Diaz felt a flicker of uncertainty. He dismissed it. No matter how clever Russell Harmon might be, he couldn't anticipate a bullet. Meanwhile, in a secure compound 200 miles away, Nathaniel paced the comfortable but clearly fortified guest house where his father had sent him. Simone, his assigned protector, watched him with professional detachment. "How long do I have to stay here?" he demanded. "Until your father resolves the situation," she replied calmly. "And how will he do that?" Nathaniel pressed. "My mother and Lawrence are planning to kill him, and he's just going to walk into their party?" Simone's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "Your father has been preparing for this confrontation for years, Nathaniel. Trust that he knows what he's doing." That's not an answer, he retorted, frustrated. It's the only one I'm authorized to give you. She checked her watch. Thomas will be calling shortly with an update. Perhaps he can ease your concerns. Nathaniel slumped onto a couch. I should be there. I should be helping him. You are helping, Simone said, her tone softening slightly. By being here, safe, you've removed their primary leverage. Your father can now act without concern for your safety. The secure phone on the table rang, and Simone answered, putting it on speaker. We're here, Thomas. Nathaniel. Thomas's voice came through clearly. Your father asked me to update you. The situation is proceeding as expected. Diaz has increased security at the lake house, but our countermeasures are in place. What countermeasures? Nathaniel asked. What is my father planning? There was a pause before Thomas replied. I can't share operational details, but I can tell you this. Your father has spent years documenting your mother and Lawrence's illegal activities. He has proof of bribery, permit fraud, and conspiracy related to the Oceanside resort. Enough to send them to prison for decades. Then why not just go to the authorities? Nathaniel asked. Because Lawrence has too many connections in law enforcement, Thomas explained. Previous attempts to expose similar operations were buried. Your father needed a more definitive approach. Nathaniel felt a chill. He's not going to kill them, is he? No, Thomas said firmly. But when this is over, they'll wish he had. The call ended, leaving Nathaniel with more questions than answers. He turned to Simone. My father, what exactly does he do? I mean, I know he's an architect, but all this, he gestured around the secure compound, isn't normal. Simone considered him for a moment. Your father is a man who prepares for every contingency. When your mother betrayed him, he channeled his pain into creating systems, a network of loyal people, resources, and information that would ensure he could protect what mattered to him. She paused. You matter to him, Nathaniel. More than you know. Nathaniel absorbed this, feeling both comforted and disturbed by the extent of his father's shadow operations. And the graduation party will be the culmination of 6 years of patience and planning, Simone replied. And the beginning of a new chapter for both of you. Chapter 6, Ghosts of the Past. 3 days before the graduation party, Russell met with his core team in a secure conference room beneath his architectural firm. Present were Thomas Westfield, head of security, Dr. Eleanor Vance, a behavioral psychologist who had helped him understand Vanessa and Lawrence's patterns, and federal agent Colin Reed, whose unofficial involvement had been crucial. Our inside sources confirmed Diaz has 7 men positioned around the property, Thomas reported, pulling up a holographic display of the lake house. 2 at each access road, 2 patrolling the grounds, and Diaz himself staying close to Lawrence. And the devices? Russell asked. All in place, Thomas confirmed. The surveillance system we installed 6 months ago during the renovation is fully operational. We have eyes and ears in every room. Russell nodded, turning to Dr. Vance. Your assessment? The psychologist studied her notes. Vanessa is becoming increasingly unstable. The loss of control over Nathaniel has triggered her abandonment issues. Lawrence is compensating with aggression and overconfidence. They're both at their most vulnerable psychologically. Good, Russell murmured. And you, Colin? Agent Reed looked uncomfortable. Everything's ready on our end, but I need to reiterate, this is completely unofficial. If anything goes wrong, the Bureau will disavow any knowledge. Nothing will go wrong, Russell assured him. Your team will receive all the evidence simultaneously with the execution of our plan. Lawrence's connections won't be able to bury it fast enough. As the meeting concluded, Thomas remained behind. There's something else, he said once they were alone. We've detected unusual activity on one of our surveillance channels. Someone may be piggybacking on our system. Russell's expression remained calm. Let them. It might be useful for them to see exactly what we want them to see. And Nathaniel? He's getting restless at the safe house. Keep him there until it's over, Russell said firmly. No matter what he says or what happens, he stays protected. Thomas nodded, then hesitated. Russell, I've worked with you for 6 years. I've never questioned your methods or your motives. But this plan, the scale of it, is proportional to their crimes, Russell finished. They didn't just betray me, Thomas. They've ruined lives with their developments, threatened people who stood in their way. And now they're willing to kill me and potentially harm my son. His eyes hardened. They've earned what's coming. Later that evening, Russell stood on his penthouse balcony, watching the city lights flicker like stars. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Still time to walk away. Take your son and disappear. Last warning. He smiled grimly. Diaz was getting nervous, attempting direct contact. It confirmed what he already suspected. They had detected some of his preparations, but didn't understand their purpose. Russell typed a reply. I never walk away. See you at the party. He sent it, then turned to find Thomas in the doorway. They reached out directly, Russell told him. Desperate move, Thomas observed. What now? Now we give them something to think about. Russell pulled up a program on his phone and activated it. Across the city at the Paxton Lake House, every electronic device, phones, computers, security systems, simultaneously displayed the same image for 3 seconds before returning to normal. A simple architectural blueprint of a trapdoor. A psychological shot across the bow. His phone rang almost immediately. Vanessa, her voice tight with controlled fury. What do you want, Russell? Just ensuring you receive my RSVP for the party, he replied calmly. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Stay away from my house, she hissed. Stay away from my family. Our son, he corrected mildly, graduates only once. I'll be there to celebrate with him. He doesn't want you there. None of us do. Russell's voice hardened slightly. Yet you insisted on a personal invitation. Make up your mind, Vanessa. There was a pause before she spoke again, her tone suddenly different, vulnerable, almost pleading. Russell, please. Let's not do this. Whatever you're planning, whatever you think you know, we could talk about it. For Nathaniel's sake. It was a masterful performance. 6 years ago, it might have swayed him. Interesting strategy, he commented, switching from threats to emotional appeals. Did Dr. Stevens suggest that approach? He always did favor the carrot and stick method. Her sharp intake of breath confirmed his suspicion. Dr. Stevens had been their marriage counselor years ago, and now apparently was coaching Vanessa again. You're monitoring us, she accused. Just returning the favor, Russell replied. See you Saturday, Vanessa. Give my regards to Lawrence and Diaz. He ended the call, knowing he had accomplished his goal. They would be off balance now, wondering how much he knew, how he knew it, and what he planned to do with the information. Thomas gave him a questioning look. Was that wise? Necessary, Russell corrected. I need them reactive, not proactive. When people are afraid, they make mistakes. The next day, reports from their surveillance confirmed the effect of Russell's psychological warfare. Lawrence and Diaz had spent hours sweeping the house for bugs, finding only the decoys Russell had wanted them to find. Vanessa had argued with Lawrence about canceling the party, but he had refused, insisting they needed to maintain appearances. Meanwhile, Diaz had brought in additional security, increasing his team to 10 men. The lake house was now effectively a fortress, with armed guards at every entrance. They're expecting a frontal assault, Thomas reported, showing Russell the security footage. Diaz has positioned his men to repel an attack team. Russell smiled faintly, while leaving themselves completely vulnerable to what's actually coming. He turned to Thomas. Initiate the final phase. It's time to bring the ghosts home. Thomas nodded, understanding the reference. They'll be in position by tomorrow morning. Are you sure about this part of the plan? Absolutely, Russell affirmed. It's not enough to destroy Lawrence and Vanessa. I want them to understand why they're being destroyed. I want them to face everyone they've ever wronged. The next morning, the day before the graduation party, 5 luxury cars arrived at the main gate of the Paxton estate. The security guards were confronted with impeccably dressed men and women bearing what appeared to be legitimate invitations to a pre-graduation brunch. Confused, the guards called the house, where an equally confused Lawrence demanded to know what was happening. By the time he realized the invitations were forgeries, the visitors had been admitted and were proceeding up the drive. Russell watched through the surveillance system as Lawrence and Vanessa emerged onto the front steps, their expressions shifting from confusion to shock as they recognized their uninvited guests. The former owners of the Oceanside Resort property, whom Lawrence had forced out through fraudulent foreclosures, the environmental inspector who had been bribed to falsify reports, the city councilwoman whose career Lawrence had destroyed when she opposed the development, and the journalist whose exposé on Paxton development had been buried after Lawrence threatened his family. Each ghost from their past now stood before them, silent and accusing. Lawrence recovered first. What is the meaning of this? This is private property. You're trespassing. The former property owner, an elderly man leaning on a cane, stepped forward. We received invitations. Quite official looking. Something about making amends. Get out, Lawrence snarled. All of you. Before I have you removed. That would be unwise, the journalist replied calmly, holding up his phone. This entire encounter is being live-streamed. How would it look for the great Lawrence Paxton to have elderly former homeowners forcibly ejected from his property? As if on cue, a news helicopter appeared overhead. Vanessa, her face pale, touched Lawrence's arm. Invite them in, she murmured. We can't make a scene. Not now. Lawrence's jaw clenched, but he forced a smile. Of course. Please come in. There must have been some misunderstanding about the date. As the ghosts were reluctantly ushered inside, Russell turned to Thomas. Perfect. Now, they'll be completely distracted dealing with this situation while we make our final preparations. And tomorrow? Thomas asked. Russell's expression was resolute. Tomorrow, justice. Chapter 7. The Graduation Party. The day of Nathaniel's graduation party dawned clear and bright, the lake a mirror reflecting the cloudless sky. By noon, the first legitimate guests began to arrive. Nathaniel's professors, classmates, and family friends, all unaware of the tension simmering beneath the celebration surface. Russell arrived precisely at 1 p.m., dressed impeccably in a tailored suit that concealed a lightweight, bulletproof vest. He handed his invitation to the security guard at the gate, who checked it against a list before reluctantly waving him through. The lakeside terrace had been transformed with white tents, floral arrangements, and a string quartet playing softly in the background. Servers circulated with champagne and canapes. To any observer, it appeared to be nothing more than a proud family celebrating their son's achievement. Russell scanned the crowd, noting the positions of Diaz's men, obvious to his trained eye despite their attempts to blend in with the guests. He accepted a glass of champagne from a passing server and made his way through the party, exchanging pleasantries with Nathaniel's professors while aware of the eyes tracking his movements. Lawrence spotted him first, his face tightening before he composed himself and approached with a false smile. Russell, so glad you could make it. I wouldn't miss it, Russell replied, matching Lawrence's insincere tone. Although I noticed the guest of honor is absent. Lawrence's smile slipped slightly. Nathaniel's running late. Last-minute preparations at the university. Vanessa's gone to collect him. A lie, of course. Russell knew exactly where Nathaniel was, still safely at the compound, protected by Simone. But he merely nodded. I look forward to seeing him. As Lawrence excused himself to greet other guests, Russell caught a glimpse of the ghosts from the previous day, now legitimately invited and scattered throughout the party. Each one carried a small device disguised as a phone or watch, recording equipment providing additional surveillance. 2 hours into the celebration, the atmosphere remained outwardly festive, but increasingly tense. Vanessa had returned without Nathaniel, claiming he had texted that he would arrive on his own. She avoided Russell entirely, keeping to the opposite side of the terrace while maintaining a strained smile for the guests. Russell checked his watch. Nearly time. His phone vibrated once, the signal from Thomas that all elements were in position. He made his way casually toward the boathouse, knowing Diaz's men would report his movement. As expected, within minutes, Lawrence appeared at his side. Admiring the view, Lawrence asked, gesturing toward the lake. Remembering, Russell replied. Nathaniel learned to swim off that dock. Vanessa and I taught him together. Lawrence's jaw tightened. The past is gone, Russell. Perhaps we should discuss the future. Privately, he nodded toward the boathouse. Lead the way, Russell agreed, following Lawrence down the path that wound along the lakeshore. The boathouse was a modern structure of glass and cedar, with a covered slip where Lawrence's speedboat gleamed. Inside, as Russell had anticipated, waited Diaz and two of his men. "Mr. Harmon," Diaz greeted him with cold professionalism. "Thank you for making this easy." Russell smiled slightly. "On the contrary, I'm making it impossible." Confusion flickered across Diaz's face, but before he could respond, his earpiece crackled. He pressed a finger to it, listening, and his expression changed to one of alarm. "Sir," he addressed Lawrence, "we have a situation. Federal agents are at the gate." Lawrence paled. "What? Stall them." "Too late," Russell said calmly. "They're already on the property." Along with a full team from the State Environmental Protection Agency, the district attorney's office, and several journalists who received anonymous tips about environmental violations and conspiracy to commit murder. As if to confirm his words, they could hear commotion from the main house, raised voices, the thud of heavy vehicles arriving. Lawrence turned on Russell, his face contorted with rage. "What have you done?" "I've simply arranged for the appropriate authorities to receive evidence of your crimes," Russell replied. "The illegal land acquisitions for Oceanside Resort, the falsified environmental impact studies, the bribes to planning officials, and, of course, your plot to murder me at my son's graduation party." Diaz drew his weapon, pointing it at Russell's chest. "This changes nothing. You won't leave here alive." "Actually, I will," Russell countered, "because this entire conversation is being broadcast live to the federal agents currently moving through your property. The boathouse has been wired for video and audio for months. Kill me, and you add another murder charge to the multiple felonies you're already facing." As if on cue, a voice boomed through a megaphone outside. "This is the FBI. The building is surrounded. Come out with your hands up." Diaz hesitated, looking to Lawrence for guidance. Lawrence's mind worked frantically. "This is a bluff. He can't prove anything about Oceanside. We covered our tracks." "Did you?" Russell produced a flash drive from his pocket. "Your wife helped me steal your designs 6 years ago. Did you really think I wouldn't return the favor? While you were focused on monitoring me, my team has had access to your systems for years. Every email, every digital conversation, every financial transaction, all documented and verified." Lawrence lunged for the flash drive, but Diaz caught his arm. "Don't. It's over." "Listen to your hired killer, Lawrence," Russell advised. "He understands the concept of cutting losses." The door to the boathouse burst open as federal agents flooded in, weapons drawn. Federal agents. Hands where we can see them. Diaz slowly placed his gun on the floor and raised his hands. Lawrence, his face ashen, did the same. As the agents secured them, Agent Reed approached Russell. "You okay?" Russell nodded. "Right on schedule." "Where's Vanessa?" "Being taken into custody at the main house," Reed confirmed, along with several of Diaz's men who decided not to resist. Russell walked out onto the dock, looking back toward the terrace where guests were being interviewed by authorities. The celebration transformed into a crime scene. A separate team of agents was escorting the ghosts, the whistleblowers and victims who had agreed to testify against Lawrence and Vanessa, to waiting vehicles. His phone rang. "Nathaniel." "Dad? Thomas just told me what happened. Are you all right?" "I'm fine," Russell assured him. "It's over." "So they're going to prison?" "With the evidence we've gathered, they'll be facing multiple federal charges. Neither Lawrence's connections nor his money will save them this time." There was a pause before Nathaniel spoke again. "Can I come home now?" Russell felt something in his chest loosen, a tension he had carried for years. "Yes, it's safe now." As he ended the call, Russell noticed Lawrence being led past him toward a waiting FBI vehicle. Their eyes met, and Lawrence's face twisted with hatred. "This isn't over," Lawrence spat. "You think you've won, but you have no idea what you've started." Russell watched him impassively. "On the contrary, I've just finished what you began 6 years ago when you decided to steal what was mine." He stepped closer, his voice lowering. "Consider yourself lucky. Prison is merciful compared to what I originally planned for you." The threat hung in the air between them as agents led Lawrence away. Russell remained on the dock, watching the law enforcement activity with a sense of completion rather than triumph. The vengeance he had meticulously crafted for 6 years had been executed perfectly, but the victory felt hollow without his son present. A voice behind him broke into his thoughts. Mr. Harmon. He turned to find one of the agents, a young woman with a serious expression. Yes, there's been a development at the main house. You should come. Chapter 8. Son of the Father. Russell followed the agent back to the lakeside terrace, now transformed into a command center for the multi-agency operation. Guests had been corralled into one area for questioning, while evidence teams combed through the house. Agent Reed met him at the steps. We have a problem, Reed said without preamble. Vanessa's missing. What? Russell's calm facade cracked. How is that possible? You said she was in custody. She was being processed when she requested to use the bathroom. The female agent who accompanied her was found unconscious. Vanessa somehow acquired her weapon and slipped past the perimeter. Russell's mind raced through contingencies. She knows the property better than anyone. There are underground access tunnels from the original estate. He pulled up a schematic on his phone. Here and here. She could have used either to reach the road beyond the security checkpoint. Reed dispatched teams to check the tunnels, but Russell knew it was likely too late. She's not running away, he said with certainty. She's making a countermove. What kind of countermove? Reed asked. The realization hit Russell like a physical blow. Nathaniel. He pulled out his phone, dialing Simone. No answer. He tried Thomas next, who picked up immediately. She's gone dark. Thomas reported before Russell could ask. Simone missed her check-in. I've dispatched a team to the safe house. ETA, 10 minutes. Too long, Russell snapped. Vanessa knows where he is. She must have been tracking my movements more effectively than we realized. How could she know about the safe house? Reed demanded. Because I underestimated her, Russell admitted, the rare acknowledgement of failure bitter on his tongue. I was so focused on Lawrence and his operation that I didn't give enough weight to Vanessa's own resources. His phone buzzed with an incoming text from an unknown number, like father, like son. Let's see how well you taught him to swim. Attached was a photo of Nathaniel, unconscious in what appeared to be the back of a vehicle. Simone was visible in the background, bleeding from a head wound. Russell showed the image to Reed and Thomas. She's taking him to water. Not here, too obvious. Where else? The reservoir, Thomas suggested. Your old property on the west side. The hunting cabin, Russell agreed. It's remote, accessible by boat, and has emotional significance. That would appeal to her. Reed was already organizing a tactical team, but Russell shook his head. No time. She has at least a 30-minute head start. By the time her team gets there, it will be too late. So what's your plan? Reed demanded. Russell met his gaze steadily. I'm going alone. She wants me, not Nathaniel. This was always between us. That's not how federal operations work, Reed objected. This stopped being just a federal operation the moment she took my son, Russell countered. I'm going. You can follow with your team, but I'm not waiting. Before Reed could argue further, Russell was already moving, Thomas falling in beside him as they headed for the helicopter Russell had stationed nearby as an emergency extraction plan. I'm coming with you, Thomas said, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. Russell nodded once, knowing better than to waste time arguing. As they lifted off, Thomas handed him a tactical vest and a sidearm. Just in case diplomacy fails, he said grimly. The flight to the reservoir took 18 agonizing minutes. From the air, they spotted Vanessa's vehicle parked at the old boat launch near the hunting cabin that had once been part of Russell's family property, a weekend retreat he had maintained after his parents' death, and where he had taken Nathaniel fishing as a child. There, Russell pointed to a small boat moving across the water toward the cabin's private dock. That's her. The pilot set them down in a clearing a quarter-mile from the cabin. Russell and Thomas disembarked, moving swiftly through the forest with the familiarity of men who had prepared for this scenario. I'll circle around to the back, Thomas whispered as they approached. Give you 10 minutes to make contact before I move in. Russell nodded, watching Thomas disappear into the trees before advancing toward the cabin alone. He kept to cover until he reached the edge of the clearing, then deliberately stepped into the open, hands visible. Vanessa, he called out. I'm here, alone. The cabin door opened slowly, and Vanessa emerged, holding a pistol, the agent's weapon. She looked wild-eyed, her perfect appearance disheveled, her designer outfit stained with dirt and sweat. "Drop your weapon and kick it away," she commanded, her voice surprisingly steady. Russell complied, removing his gun and sending it spinning across the ground. "Where's Nathaniel?" "Safe," she replied. "For now. Inside, tied up but unharmed. Unlike your attack dog." Her smile was razor-sharp. "Simone, was it?" She put up quite a fight. "Let Nathaniel go," Russell said evenly. "This is between you and me. It always has been." Vanessa laughed bitterly. "So noble now. Where was that nobility when you were systematically destroying everything Lawrence and I built? When you were turning our son against us?" "You did that yourself," Russell replied. "I never lied to Nathaniel about you. I never needed to. Your actions spoke for themselves." She gestured with the gun. Inside. Slowly, Russell mounted the steps to the cabin porch, maintaining eye contact with Vanessa. As he passed her, she pressed the gun to his back, pushing him through the door. Inside, Nathaniel was indeed tied to a chair, a gag in his mouth. His eyes widened when he saw his father. Beside him, Simone lay unconscious on the floor, blood matting her hair. Russell moved toward his son, but Vanessa jabbed the gun harder into his back. "Don't. Touch the ropes, and I shoot you where you stand." "What's your plan here, Vanessa?" Russell asked, turning to face her. "Lawrence is in custody. Your assets are being frozen as we speak. There's no version of this where you emerge victorious. There's a version where you suffer," she countered, her eyes feverish. "Where you lose everything, just like I have." Understanding dawned. "You're planning to kill Nathaniel. Make me watch, then kill me." Vanessa's smile was chilling. "Always the quick study. But first, I want you to understand exactly what you've done. The lives you've ruined with your obsessive need for vengeance." "My need?" Russell echoed incredulously. "You betrayed me. You stole from me. You and Lawrence conspired to have me killed. Because you gave us no choice," she shouted, her composure cracking. "You were suffocating me, controlling everything. Then when I found happiness with Lawrence, you couldn't let go. You had to destroy us." Russell studied her, seeing the delusion in her eyes. "You rewrote history to justify your actions. I never controlled you, Vanessa. I trusted you. That was my mistake." Her hand trembled on the gun. "Enough talking. On your knees." Russell complied slowly, calculating angles, distances, options. Thomas would be in position by now, but any sudden move risked Nathaniel's safety. "I want you to apologize," Vanessa demanded. "To Nathaniel. For using him in your vendetta. For not being there when he needed a father." Russell met his son's eyes. "I have nothing to apologize for. Everything I've done has been to protect him. From you, from Lawrence, from the consequences of your choices." Vanessa's face contorted with rage. "Wrong answer." She swung the gun toward Nathaniel. Russell lunged forward, closing the distance before she could fire. He caught her wrist, forcing the gun upward as it discharged, the bullet shattering the cabin's front window. They struggled for control, Vanessa fighting with unexpected strength fueled by desperation. She kneed him in the stomach, momentarily breaking his grip. The gun came level with his chest. "Goodbye, Russell," she snarled. A single shot rang out. Vanessa's eyes widened in shock. She looked down at the spreading crimson stain on her chest, then back up at Russell in confusion. Behind her stood Nathaniel, his bonds cut, Simone's backup weapon in his trembling hands. Somehow, during the struggle, he had managed to free himself and retrieve the gun hidden in Simone's ankle holster. "Nathaniel," Vanessa whispered, her voice suddenly small. She took a stumbling step toward him. "My baby." Nathaniel's face was stone. "You were going to kill my father." Vanessa collapsed to her knees, the gun falling from her limp fingers. "I just wanted to protect us from him. He was never the threat," Nathaniel said quietly. "You were." Russell kicked Vanessa's weapon away, then moved swiftly to his son's side. "Are you hurt?" Nathaniel shook his head, still staring at his mother as she slumped to the floor. "I killed her," he said numbly. "You saved my life," Russell corrected, wrapping an arm around his son's shoulders and gently taking the gun from his hands. "And she's not dead yet." As if on cue, Thomas burst through the back door, weapon raised. Taking in the scene with a professional glance, he immediately went to Simone, checking her pulse. "She'll live," he reported before moving to Vanessa. "GSW to the chest," he assessed. "She needs immediate medical attention." Russell nodded. "Call it in. Then check the perimeter. Make sure she didn't bring anyone else." As Thomas moved to comply, Russell guided Nathaniel to a chair, keeping his body between his son and the sight of his bleeding mother. "It's over," he said softly. "You're safe now." Nathaniel looked up at him, his eyes hollow. "At my graduation party, when I hugged you, I was trying to warn you. I knew something was planned. I never thought it would end like this." "I know," Russell said, "and none of this is your fault. Remember that." The sound of approaching helicopters filtered through the broken window, Reed and his team arriving at last. Russell held his son's gaze. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Nathaniel nodded slowly, some of the shock receding from his expression. "Like father, like son," he murmured, unknowingly echoing Vanessa's taunt. Russell glanced at his ex-wife's unconscious form, then back at his son. In that moment, he saw himself in Nathaniel's eyes. The same capacity for calculated action, for doing whatever was necessary to protect what mattered. It was both a comfort and a concern. "Yes," he agreed quietly, "but you're also your own man. Don't let this define you." Federal agents swarmed the cabin, securing the scene. Paramedics rushed to treat Simone and Vanessa. Through it all, Russell remained at his son's side, a silent bulwark against the chaos. Agent Reed approached them, his expression grave. "We need statements from both of you." Later, Russell said firmly, "My son needs medical attention and rest." Reed looked like he might argue, then nodded reluctantly. "Tomorrow, then?" "First thing." He hesitated. "For what it's worth, this appears to be a clear case of self-defense. Ms. Paxton abducted 2 people at gunpoint and attempted murder." As they exited the cabin, Russell kept his arm around Nathaniel's shoulders. The sun was setting over the reservoir, painting the water in shades of crimson and gold. It seemed fitting that one chapter of their lives should end as the day did, with both beauty and blood on the horizon. "What happens now?" Nathaniel asked as they walked toward the waiting helicopter. Russell considered the question, thinking of the empire he had built, the vengeance he had orchestrated, and the cost of both. "Now we rebuild," he said finally. "Together." Chapter 9, Blood and Water. 3 months after the events at the hunting cabin, Russell Harmon stood at the window of his penthouse, watching a summer thunderstorm roll across the city. Behind him, Nathaniel lounged on the couch, textbooks spread around him as he prepared for his PhD program in environmental engineering. "Professor Wilson called again," Nathaniel mentioned casually. "He's still hoping I'll reconsider joining his research team." Russell turned, studying his son. The past months had changed Nathaniel, hardening him in some ways while clarifying his purpose in others. The trauma of shooting his own mother had left its mark, but he had refused counseling, choosing instead to process the experience in his own way, much as Russell would have done. "And will you?" Russell asked. Nathaniel shrugged. "Maybe. His project on sustainable urban development aligns with what I want to do. But I'd be working with Mary Tech Construction, and given their history." "You're concerned about the ethics," Russell concluded. "I'm concerned about associating with a company that might be cutting corners," Nathaniel corrected. "I won't build my career on compromised foundations." Russell nodded, recognizing his own principles reflected in his son's words. Since the confrontation at the cabin, Nathaniel had moved into the penthouse, their relationship evolving into something closer to partnership than traditional father-son dynamics. It was both gratifying and occasionally concerning to Russell how quickly Nathaniel had adapted to his worldview. "Any word from Agent Reed?" Nathaniel asked, changing the subject. "The sentencing is next week," Russell replied. "Lawrence is looking at 15 to 20 years for conspiracy, fraud, and attempted murder. Without Vanessa's testimony against him, the prosecution's case isn't as strong as it could be, but the evidence we gathered is substantial." Nathaniel's expression darkened at the mention of his mother. Vanessa had survived the gunshot wound, but had suffered a stroke during surgery that left her partially paralyzed and with significant cognitive impairment. She was currently in a high-security medical facility, deemed unfit to stand trial. "Have you visited her?" Russell asked, already knowing the answer. "No." Nathaniel's tone made it clear the subject was closed. Russell didn't push. He understood better than most the need to compartmentalize painful relationships. Instead, he moved to his desk and retrieved a folder. "I have something for you to consider." Nathaniel took the folder, opening it to find architectural plans for a large-scale development. "What is this?" "The oceanside resort property," Russell explained. "With Lawrence's assets frozen and the company in receivership, the land is being sold at auction next month. I'm considering acquiring it." Nathaniel studied the plans with growing interest. "This isn't a resort. It's a marine research center with sustainable housing. It's a concept I've been developing," Russell acknowledged. "The location is perfect. Access to protected waters, existing infrastructure that can be repurposed. With the right team, we could create something that benefits the environment instead of exploiting it. And profits from it," Nathaniel noted shrewdly. Russell smiled. "Ethical business can still be profitable. I'm proposing we develop this together. Your environmental expertise, my architectural vision." Nathaniel set the plans aside, his expression thoughtful. "Using Lawrence's failure as our foundation." "Poetic justice," Russell agreed. "Taking something they tried to build through corruption and turning it into something meaningful." "You never intended to simply destroy them, did you?" Nathaniel asked suddenly. "You wanted to replace them, to build something better in the space they left behind." Russell considered the observation. "Destruction without creation is wasteful. I wanted justice, but also transformation." He paused. "Does that interest you?" Instead of answering directly, Nathaniel rose and moved to stand beside his father at the window. "The night of my graduation party, when I hugged you and said, 'Whatever happens tonight isn't my fault,' I was terrified. Mom had told me you were dangerous, that you might hurt people. And now," Russell prompted, "now I understand that she was right, but not in the way she meant." Nathaniel met his father's gaze. "You are dangerous to people who betray you, who threaten what's yours. But that danger is controlled, calculated." He looked back at the plans. "Yes, I'm interested. Not just in the project, but in learning how you think, how you operate." Russell felt a complex mix of pride and concern. "It's not an easy path, Nathaniel. The kind of justice I pursue comes with costs." "I've already paid the heaviest price," Nathaniel replied, his voice hardening. "I shot my own mother to save you. I made my choice." The statement hung between them, a declaration of allegiance that Russell hadn't sought but couldn't reject. His son had chosen him, chosen his worldview, his standards, his unforgiving nature. "Then we'll proceed," Russell said finally. "But remember what I told you at the cabin. Don't let one moment define you." Nathaniel's smile held a new edge that mirrored Russell's own. "It didn't define me. It revealed me." The intercom buzzed, interrupting the moment. "Mr. Harmon, Thomas Westfield, and Ms. Vance are here for your meeting." "Send them up," Russell instructed, turning back to Nathaniel. "We should discuss the details of the acquisition strategy." As his core team arrived and the planning session began, Russell observed his son integrating seamlessly into the discussion, offering insights that balanced innovation with pragmatism. Nathaniel had always had potential, but adversity had honed him, giving him a clarity of purpose that might have taken years to develop otherwise. Later that evening, after the meeting concluded, Russell received a call from Agent Reed. "Lawrence is requesting a meeting." Reed informed him without preamble. "Says he has information you might find valuable. Something about Vanessa's private accounts." "Desperate measures from a desperate man," Russell assessed. "Is it worth pursuing?" "Might be," Reed admitted. "Our financial team has hit roadblocks with some offshore accounts registered to shell companies. If Lawrence can provide access codes." "I'll consider it," Russell promised, ending the call. Nathaniel, who had been monitoring the conversation, raised an eyebrow. "You're not actually going to meet with him?" "Knowledge is leverage," Russell replied. "Whatever Lawrence is offering, it costs us nothing to listen." "Except time," Nathaniel countered, "and giving him the satisfaction of seeing you." Russell studied his son, noting the hardening of his attitudes. Sometimes the appearance of cooperation yields greater benefits than outright refusal. Nathaniel considered this, then nodded slowly. A tactical concession. Precisely. Russell returned to the development plans. Now about the research facility placement. 3 days later, Russell sat across from Lawrence Paxton in a high-security visiting room. The once powerful developer had aged years in just months, his expensive suits replaced by prison orange, his confident bearing diminished. "You look well, Russell," Lawrence opened with forced casualness. "How's Nathaniel?" "We're not here to discuss my son," Russell replied coolly. "You indicated you had information regarding Vanessa's accounts." Lawrence leaned forward, direct as always. "Yes, I know where Vanessa hid her personal fortune, separate from our shared assets. Over 30 million in untraceable funds that the feds haven't found. And you're willing to reveal this why?" Russell asked, though he already knew the answer. "Consideration at sentencing," Lawrence said, "and a percentage of the recovery. 10% seems fair." Russell allowed himself a small smile. "You're assuming I care about the money, don't you?" Lawrence challenged. "That's what this has all been about. Compensation for what you believe we took from you." "That's where you've always misunderstood me," Russell replied. "This was never about money. It was about justice, about consequences for betrayal." Lawrence's expression hardened. "Then why are you here?" "To make sure you understand something," Russell said, leaning in slightly. "I know about the contingency plans you set in motion before your arrest, the people you've contacted from inside, the threats you've made to try to maintain control of what remains of your empire." He paused, letting the implications sink in. "They won't save you." Lawrence paled slightly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The 2 former security contractors you hired to target Thomas Westfield?" Russell continued calmly. "They've been arrested. The attorney who was transferring funds to maintain your loyalty payments? Disbarred as of yesterday. The witness you were pressuring to recant? Now under federal protection." "Ow!" Lawrence began, then caught himself. "I told you 6 years ago that you would never see it coming," Russell reminded him. "That hasn't changed. For every move you make, I've already made 3 to counter it." Lawrence's facade cracked, revealing the desperation beneath. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing," Russell replied simply. "You have nothing I need or want. I came here to make sure you understand that your remaining options have been systematically eliminated. Whatever schemes you're still nurturing, whatever hopes you're clinging to, let them go." He stood to leave, but Lawrence called after him. "You think you've won, but you haven't. You've turned your son into a copy of yourself, cold, calculating, unforgiving. That's my victory. Vanessa and I may have lost everything, but so have you. The boy you loved is gone." Russell paused, considering whether to respond. "Nathaniel made his choices just as you made yours. The difference is he chose justice. You chose corruption. Justice." Lawrence laughed bitterly. "Is that what you call shooting his own mother? Training him to be your successor in vengeance? Tell yourself whatever helps you sleep at night, Russell, but we both know what you've done to him." For the first time, a flicker of doubt crossed Russell's mind. Had he demanded too high a price from his son? Had his pursuit of justice twisted Nathaniel's natural development? He pushed the thought aside. "Goodbye, Lawrence. This is the last time we'll speak." As Russell exited the prison, he found Nathaniel waiting in the car, contrary to their agreement that he would remain at the penthouse. "I needed to see him," Nathaniel explained before Russell could question his presence, "to see if he still had any power over us." "And your conclusion?" Russell asked, sliding into the seat beside him. "He doesn't," Nathaniel said with quiet certainty. "He's finished." They drove in silence for several minutes before Nathaniel spoke again. "He tried to manipulate you, didn't he? Use me as leverage somehow." Russell glanced at his son, impressed by his perception. "He suggested I had corrupted you, turned you into something you weren't meant to be." Nathaniel considered this. "And that bothers you?" "It raises questions," Russell admitted, "about the price of the path we've chosen." "The path I've chosen," Nathaniel corrected firmly. "Mom and Lawrence tried to use me as a weapon against you. That was their choice. Defending you, that was mine." He turned to face his father directly. "I don't regret it, and I don't want your protection from the consequences." Russell studied his son, seeing both himself and something entirely new in Nathaniel's resolute expression. Then we continue as planned. The oceanside acquisition moves forward next week. Good, Nathaniel nodded. I've been working on refinements to the environmental impact assessments. With the right approach, we can turn that coastline into a model of sustainable development. As they discussed the project details, Russell reflected on Lawrence's parting shot. Perhaps there was truth in it. Nathaniel had indeed changed, hardened in ways that echoed Russell's own transformation after Vanessa's betrayal. But where Russell's change had been driven by vengeance, Nathaniel seemed fueled by a desire to build something meaningful from the wreckage of his family's destruction. That night, as a new storm rolled across the city, Russell found Nathaniel on the penthouse balcony, watching the lightning with the same intensity Russell often did. I used to be afraid of storms, Nathaniel commented as his father joined him. Mom would tell me to hide under the covers until they passed. And now I understand their purpose, Nathaniel replied. They clear away what's weak to make room for new growth. He turned to Russell. Like what we did. Russell placed a hand on his son's shoulder, feeling the solid strength there. What we're doing, he corrected. This is just the beginning. Together they watched the lightning split the sky, illuminating the city they would reshape according to their vision. A vision forged in betrayal, tempered by justice, and now focused on creation rather than destruction. The storm raged around them, but they stood unmoved, two men who had discovered their true natures in the crucible of conflict and emerged stronger for it. Like father, like son, not in their capacity for vengeance, but in their refusal to forgive those who betrayed them, and their determination to build something enduring from the ashes of that betrayal. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Perfect Life. Rex Townsend stood in his corner office, watching Seattle's skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. At 35, he'd built Townsend Security, consulting from nothing into a multi-million-dollar empire. His clients ranged from tech billionaires to government agencies, all seeking his expertise in personal protection and risk assessment. Rex possessed an analytical mind that could spot danger patterns others missed, combined with the physical capabilities of his former Navy SEAL training. But none of that mattered compared to Paige. His wife of 8 years entered his office carrying 2 cups of coffee, her auburn hair catching the afternoon light. Paige Townsend was everything Rex wasn't. Warm where he was calculating, spontaneous where he was methodical, trusting where he was suspicious. She ran a successful interior design firm and had transformed their queen and home into something from a magazine. Working late again, Paige set his coffee down and perched on his desk edge. You know, normal people leave work at 5. Rex pulled her closer. Normal people don't have Francisco Garcia trying to poach their biggest client. Francisco Garcia. The name always left a bitter taste. Rex's former business partner had split from their company 5 years ago in an ugly dispute over ethics. While Rex maintained strict principles about which clients they'd accept, Francisco had wanted to expand into grayer areas. The split had been acrimonious, made worse by Francisco's attempt to steal half their client base. Forget about Francisco, Paige said, running her fingers through Rex's dark hair. I have dinner reservations at Le Bernardin. My treat for landing the Hartfield account. Rex smiled genuinely for the first time all day. Paige's design firm had been competing for the Hartfield hotel chain contract for months. Congratulations, Mrs. Townsend. You deserve it. As they prepared to leave, Rex noticed Paige seemed distracted, checking her phone repeatedly. When he asked about it, she claimed her assistant Angela Jennings was handling last-minute details for the Hartfield project. Everything okay with Angela? You seem stressed about work lately. Paige's smile flickered for just a moment. Just the usual growing pains. You know how it is when business is booming. That evening at dinner, Rex pushed aside his natural suspicious instincts. Paige was radiant, talking animatedly about expansion plans and her vision for the company's future. She'd always been ambitious, but lately her drive seemed almost desperate. Still, watching her excitement, Rex felt grateful for their life together. After dinner, as they walked to their car, Paige suddenly grabbed Rex's arm. "Promise me something. If anything ever happens to me—" "Nothing's going to happen to you." Rex cut her off. "That's why I exist. To keep you safe. I'm serious, Rex. If something happens, don't just accept the obvious explanation. You're too smart for that. Promise me you'll dig deeper." Rex studied her face in the streetlight. Something flickered in her green eyes. Fear? Regret? Before he could analyze it further, she kissed him, erasing his concerns. 3 days later, Detective Douglas Cox stood in Rex's living room, delivering the words that shattered everything. "I'm sorry, Mr. Townsend. Your wife was killed in a single-car accident on Highway 101. Her vehicle left the road at high speed and struck a tree." Chapter 2. Cracks in the Foundation. The funeral was a blur of condolences and business associates offering support. Rex moved through it mechanically, his trained mind already noting inconsistencies in the accident report. Paige was a cautious driver who knew Highway 101 intimately. The weather had been clear, the road conditions perfect. Angela Jennings approached him after the service, her usual polished demeanor cracked with genuine grief. "Rex, I can't believe she's gone." She was special. "Tell me about her last few days. Did she seem upset? Distracted?" Angela hesitated. She'd been working odd hours, taking meetings I wasn't scheduling. When I asked about it, she said she was handling some things personally. She paused, then added quietly, "I think she was in some kind of trouble." That evening, Rex sat in his home office, studying the police report for the 100th time. Paige's Mercedes had left the road at exactly 9:47 p.m., traveling at an estimated 85 miles per hour. No skid marks, no evidence of mechanical failure. The investigating officer, a young patrol cop named Eddie Seymour, had classified it as driver error, possibly falling asleep at the wheel. Rex's phone rang. Detective Cox's gruff voice filled the room. "Mr. Townsend, I need you to come to the station. We recovered some additional evidence from a scene." An hour later, Rex sat across from Cox in a sterile interview room. The detective was a 20-year veteran with tired eyes and the bearing of a man who'd seen too much. "Sir, we found the dash cam footage. The camera was damaged in the crash, but our tech guys managed to recover most of the data." Cox's expression was troubled. "The last 10 seconds of audio, you need to hear this." Cox pressed play on a small digital recorder. Rex heard the familiar hum of Paige's Mercedes, classical music playing softly in the background. Then Paige's voice, tense with fear, "Please, you don't have to do this. We can work something out." A male voice responded, cold and calculating. "Too late for that, sweetheart. You should have thought about consequences before you started digging." The sound of a struggle, then Paige screaming, "Rex! Rex!" And then, just before the crash, clear as day, laughter. Cruel, satisfied laughter that Rex recognized instantly. Francisco Garcia. Rex bolted from the chair so violently it crashed against the wall. His vision tunneled, and every instinct screamed for violence. Francisco had been in the car. Francisco had killed Paige. "Mr. Townsend," Cox called after him, but Rex was already gone, pushing through the station doors into the Seattle rain. He sat in his truck for 20 minutes, hands shaking with rage. The pieces fell into place like a tactical puzzle. Paige's strange behavior, the late-night meetings, her cryptic warning about not accepting obvious explanations. She discovered something about Francisco, something worth killing for. Rex pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. "Gustavo Velasquez." "Gustavo, it's Rex. I need your help." Gustavo Velasquez had been Rex's intelligence officer during his SEAL days, now running a private investigation firm in Portland. If anyone could help Rex uncover the truth about Francisco Garcia, it was Gustavo. "Rex, man, I heard about Paige." "I'm sorry." Gustavo's voice was warm but cautious. "What kind of help are we talking about?" "The kind that might not be strictly legal." A pause. I'll be in Seattle tomorrow. Chapter 3. Gathering Intelligence. Gustavo arrived at Rex's house the next morning, looking exactly as he had during their military days. Compact, alert, with intelligent dark eyes that missed nothing. He'd brought coffee and the kind of tactical equipment that couldn't be purchased legally. "Talk to me," Gustavo said, settling into Rex's living room. Rex played the dash cam audio, watching his old friend's expression harden. "Francisco Garcia, my former business partner. Dirtier than I thought, apparently." Rex spread out files across his coffee table. "I spent all night going through Page's papers. Look at this." He handed Gustavo a bank statement from Page's business account. Large deposits and withdrawals, all in the past 3 months, all tied to shell companies. "Money laundering?" Gustavo asked. "That's what I thought initially. But look at the timing." Rex pulled out another document. These deposits correspond exactly with Francisco's new client acquisitions. He's been using Page's legitimate business to wash money for his shadier clients. Gustavo studied the papers, and she found out. More than that, I think she was gathering evidence. Rex pulled out a hidden folder he'd found in Page's home office. She documented everything. Bank records, meeting notes, even photos of Francisco with known criminals. The photos showed Francisco at various Seattle locations with men Rex recognized from FBI wanted posters. Drug dealers, arms traffickers, the kind of clients Rex had refused to work with years ago. She was building a case against him, Gustavo observed. "Why didn't she come to you?" Rex's jaw tightened. "Because she knew I'd kill him." They spent the morning analyzing Page's evidence. The scope of Francisco's operation was staggering. He built a network that used legitimate businesses as fronts for international crime syndicates. Page's interior design firm was just one piece of a larger puzzle. "There's more," Rex said, producing a final document. "Francisco's been blackmailing his business partners. Insurance fraud, tax evasion, compromising photos. Once you're in his network, you don't get out." At noon, Rex's doorbell rang. Through the security camera, he saw a woman in her 30s with nervous eyes and expensive clothes. "That's Carrie Landry," Rex told Gustavo. "She owns a chain of boutique hotels. One of Francisco's clients." Rex opened the door. Carrie stepped inside quickly, glancing over her shoulder. "Mr. Townsend, I heard about Page. I'm so sorry." Her voice shook. "But I need to tell you something. About Francisco Garcia." They sat in Rex's living room as Carrie revealed the full extent of Francisco's operation. He controlled dozens of businesses through a combination of legitimate partnerships and criminal coercion. Those who tried to leave were destroyed financially or physically. "Page tried to help me get out," Carrie said, tears streaming down her face. "She said she had enough evidence to bring Francisco down. That was 2 weeks ago. Then she died, and Francisco called me personally. He said if I ever talked to the police or anyone else, I'd end up like her." Rex exchanged glances with Gustavo. They had confirmation. Francisco had killed Page to protect his criminal empire. "There's something else," Carrie continued. "Francisco's planning something big. A meeting next week with all his business partners. He calls it insurance, making sure everyone stays loyal." She provided details about the meeting location, an abandoned warehouse Francisco owned in the industrial district. It would be heavily guarded, with representatives from his entire criminal network present. After Carrie left, Rex and Gustavo sat in silence, processing the implications. "You know what you're thinking is suicide," Gustavo finally said. Rex looked at his friend with cold determination. "Francisco killed my wife. He's built an empire on other people's fear and suffering. And he's getting away with it because people like Carrie are too scared to stand up to him. So what's the plan?" Rex smiled for the first time since Page's death, but it wasn't pleasant. "Francisco thinks he's untouchable because he's surrounded himself with criminals and cowards. But he made one mistake. He killed someone I loved. And I'm not a criminal or a coward." He pulled out a blueprint of the warehouse district. "We're going to turn his own network against him. By the time we're done, Francisco Garcia will lose everything: his business, his freedom, and his life." Gustavo studied the blueprint, then looked at his friend. "You sure about this path, Rex? Once we start, there's no going back." Rex thought of Paige's final scream, of Francisco's laughter. He already made sure there was no going back. Chapter 4. Building the Trap. Rex's plan began with reconnaissance. For 3 days, he and Gustavo surveilled Francisco's operation, mapping his daily routines and identifying weaknesses in his security. Francisco had grown arrogant over the years, believing his criminal network made him invincible. They discovered Francisco's pattern. Every morning at 7 a.m., he visited his legitimate front company, Garcia Security Solutions, in a downtown high-rise. The irony wasn't lost on Rex. Francisco had stolen his company name along with his clients. On Thursday morning, Rex stood in the building's lobby wearing an expensive suit and carrying a briefcase. When Francisco emerged from the elevator, Rex was ready. "Hello, Francisco." Francisco Garcia froze. At 42, he maintained his lean build, but gained the soft edges of a man who relied on others for violence. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his suit custom-tailored. He looked like a successful businessman, not a killer. "Rex." Francisco's voice was carefully neutral. "I heard about Paige. Tragic accident. Was it?" Rex stepped closer, noting how Francisco's bodyguard tensed. "I keep thinking about those dashcam recordings. Amazing what technology can recover these days." For just a moment, Francisco's composure cracked. His eyes darted toward his bodyguard, a thick-necked man named Jesse Rollins. "I don't know what you're implying, but—" "I'm not implying anything." Rex cut him off. "I'm stating facts. You killed my wife, and I'm going to destroy you for it." Francisco recovered his composure, even managing a cold smile. "That sounds like a threat, Rex. Jesse here might interpret that as a danger to my safety." Rex looked at Jesse Rollins, a hired muscle with more bulk than brains. "Jesse, isn't it? Former bouncer at the Red Door? 3 arrests for assault, 1 conviction. Francisco's paying you what, $5,000 a month?" Jesse's confusion was evident. Rex continued. "Did you know your boss is under federal investigation? Tax evasion, money laundering, murder conspiracy. When the FBI raids his office next week, everyone in his organization becomes a co-conspirator." "He's lying," Francisco said quickly, but uncertainty flickered in Jesse's eyes. Rex handed Jesse a business card. "When you're ready to make a deal, call me. The FBI offers excellent witness protection programs." Without waiting for a response, Rex walked away, leaving Francisco to deal with his suddenly suspicious bodyguard. That afternoon, Rex met with Detective Cox at a coffee shop near the police station. Cox had been investigating Francisco's organization for months, but lacked the evidence for arrests. "The dashcam audio isn't enough," Cox explained. "Defense attorneys would claim the voice could be anyone. We need physical evidence tying Francisco to the scene." Rex leaned forward. "What if I told you Francisco's planning a meeting with his entire criminal network? Every major player in his organization, all in one place." Cox's eyes sharpened. "When and where?" "Saturday night. Warehouse District. But there's a complication. They'll be heavily armed and expecting trouble. Then we go in with SWAT and watch half of them escape in the confusion." Rex shook his head. "I have a better idea. What if they were too busy fighting each other to notice the police arriving?" Rex outlined his plan. Cox listened with growing amazement and concern. "That's insane, Rex, and probably illegal. Paige is dead because these people think they're above the law. Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire." Cox was quiet for a long moment. "What do you need from me?" Meanwhile, Gustavo was implementing phase 2 of their plan. He'd identified 3 key members of Francisco's network who were vulnerable to manipulation. The first was Russell Costa, who ran a construction company Francisco used for money laundering. Russell's weakness was his gambling addiction. He owed significant money to the wrong people. The second was Tyler Lloyd, who managed Francisco's drug distribution network. Tyler's weakness was simpler. He was ambitious and jealous of Francisco's success. The third was Edmund Vasquez, Francisco's accountant. Edmund's weakness was his family. Francisco had been threatening his daughter to ensure loyalty. Gustavo approached each man separately, offering them a way out of Francisco's organization in exchange for cooperation. The key was making them believe betraying Francisco was their only chance for survival. By Friday evening, Rex's trap was set. Francisco's own people would turn on him at the warehouse meeting, creating chaos that would allow the police to arrest everyone involved. But Rex had a separate agenda, ensuring Francisco paid personally for Paige's murder. "You sure you want to go through with this?" Gustavo asked as they reviewed their equipment. Rex checked his sidearm, a custom .45 that had served him well during his military years. "Francisco laughed while my wife died. He's going to learn there are consequences for that kind of cruelty. And if the plan goes wrong..." Rex met his friend's eyes. "Then at least Paige will know I tried to get justice for her." Chapter 5. Betrayal and Manipulation. Saturday morning brought unexpected complications. Rex received a call from Carrie Landry. Her voice panicked. "Rex, Francisco knows about our meeting. He's threatening to kill my daughter if I don't tell him everything we discussed." Rex felt the familiar cold focus of his military training. "Where are you now?" "My hotel, the Grandview. But Francisco's people are watching me." "Stay put. I'm coming." Rex arrived at the Grandview Hotel within 20 minutes, using tradecraft from his sealed days to avoid Francisco's surveillance. He found Carrie in her penthouse suite, trembling with fear. "He called an hour ago," she said. "He knows you and Gustavo have been investigating him. He knows about Detective Cox. He says if I don't bring you to the warehouse tonight, he'll hurt my family." Rex studied her face, looking for deception. Carrie Landry was genuinely terrified, but that didn't mean she could be trusted. "What exactly did Francisco say?" "That you've been poisoning his people against him. That some of his men are planning to betray him tonight." Carrie's voice cracked. "He wants me to bring you to the warehouse as a peace offering." Rex smiled grimly. His manipulation campaign was working better than expected. Francisco was paranoid, which made him dangerous but also predictable. "You're going to do exactly what Francisco asked," Rex told Carrie. "What?" Her eyes widened. "He'll kill you. Let me worry about that. Just make sure your daughter is somewhere safe." That afternoon, Rex met with Gustavo and Detective Cox for final preparations. Cox had assembled an elite tactical team, but they would wait for Rex's signal before moving. "Francisco's expecting a trap now," Cox warned. "He'll be ready for anything." "Good," Rex said. "Paranoid people will make mistakes." At 6 p.m., Rex received confirmation that his manipulation campaign had succeeded beyond expectations. Russell Costa called to report that Tyler Lloyd had approached him about eliminating Francisco during the meeting. "Tyler says Francisco's planning to kill everyone who knows about his operation," Russell said nervously. "He wants to start fresh with new partners." Rex smiled. The lie he'd planted through Gustavo was spreading through Francisco's organization like a virus. By evening, everyone would be suspicious of everyone else. At 7 p.m., Edmund Vasquez contacted Rex with even better news. Francisco's moving the meeting to a different location. He doesn't trust the warehouse anymore. "Where?" "His private compound in Bellevue, the one with the boat dock. He figures if things go bad, he can escape by water." Rex exchanged glances with Gustavo. Francisco's compound was even better for their purposes, more isolated, with limited escape routes they could control. At 8 p.m., Carrie Landry arrived at Rex's house as planned. She was pale but determined. "My daughter is safe," she reported. "Hidden where Francisco can't find her." Rex handed her a small device. "Wear this. It's a wire. Detective Cox will be monitoring everything. Francisco will search me." "No, he won't. You're going to tell him you escaped from me, that I forced information from you, but you managed to get away. He'll be so focused on the threat I represent, he won't think to check you for surveillance equipment." Carrie looked terrified but nodded. "What about you? How do you get to the compound?" Rex showed her a map of the waterfront area. "I'll be arriving by a different route." Chapter 6. The Compound. Francisco Garcia's compound occupied 5 acres of prime waterfront property in Bellevue, surrounded by high walls and sophisticated security systems. Rex studied it through night vision binoculars from a speedboat anchored a half-mile offshore. 12 guards that I can see, Gustavo reported through his earpiece. Motion sensors on the perimeter, cameras at every angle. In the dock, 2 speedboats tied up, engines warm. Francisco's definitely planning an escape route. Rex checked his equipment one final time. In addition to his sidearm, he carried flash grenades, zip ties, and a small explosive device Gustavo had acquired through military contacts. Tonight wasn't just about arresting Francisco. It was about ensuring he faced justice for Page's murder. At 9:30 p.m., Carrie Landry's voice crackled through their communication system. She was inside the compound, having convinced Francisco she'd escaped from Rex after being interrogated. "He believes me," she whispered. "But Rex, there are more people here than we expected. At least 30 men, all armed." Through Carrie's wire, they heard Francisco addressing his gathered associates. His voice carried the paranoid edge of a man who knew his empire was crumbling. "Someone has been spreading lies about me," Francisco said, "telling you I'm planning to eliminate loyal partners. These are the desperate actions of Rex Townsend, a man who can't accept that his wife died because of her own greed." Rex's jaw tightened. Even now, Francisco was twisting the truth. "Paige Townsend discovered our operation and tried to blackmail us," Francisco continued. "When that failed, she threatened to expose everyone. I had no choice but to protect all of you." Through his binoculars, Rex could see into the compound's main building through large windows. Francisco stood at the center of a group of well-dressed criminals, playing the role of a concerned leader protecting his people. "Rex Townsend is outside right now," Francisco announced. "He's planning to attack this compound with the help of federal agents. But I have a surprise for him." Francisco gestured to someone off camera. Moments later, guards dragged in Detective Cox, bloodied and barely conscious. Rex's blood ran cold. The detective must have been captured during his own surveillance of the compound. This changed everything. "Cox was monitoring our communications," Francisco said, "which means the police know about tonight's meeting. We have perhaps an hour before they arrive in force." Francisco pulled out a pistol and pressed it to Cox's head. "But first, we're going to send Rex Townsend a message about what happens to people who interfere with our business." Rex was already moving before Francisco finished speaking. He signaled Gustavo to begin their assault on the compound's waterfront while Rex approached from the main gate. The first guard never saw Rex coming. A knife between the ribs dropped him silently to the ground. Rex acquired his assault rifle and moved toward the main building, using shadows and cover like the predator he'd been trained to be. Behind him, explosions echoed from the boat dock as Gustavo destroyed Francisco's escape route. Alarms began blaring throughout the compound. Rex reached the main building just as Francisco's men began organizing their defense. Through the windows, he could see Francisco shouting orders while keeping his gun trained on Detective Cox. Time was running out. Rex activated the small explosive device Gustavo had provided and hurled it through the main window. The flashbang grenade detonated in the center of Francisco's meeting, creating chaos and temporary blindness. Rex followed immediately, crashing through the window in a shower of glass and smoke. Chapter 7: Confrontation. The flashbang had done its work perfectly. Francisco's associates stumbled around the room, temporarily blinded and disoriented. Rex moved through them like a ghost, using their confusion to his advantage. He dropped 2 men with precise strikes to pressure points, acquired another weapon, and moved toward Francisco's last known position. The smoke was beginning to clear, and Francisco's men were regaining their vision. "There!" Tyler Lloyd shouted, pointing at Rex's position. "Kill him." But instead of coordinating their attack, Francisco's paranoid associates turned on each other. Rex's manipulation campaign had succeeded. Each man suspected the others of betrayal. Tyler Lloyd shot Russell Costa in the back, claiming he was reaching for a weapon. Edmund Vasquez tackled Tyler, screaming about his threatened daughter. Other men joined the melee, years of suppressed resentments exploding into violence. Rex used the chaos to reach Detective Cox, who was conscious but barely mobile. "Can you walk?" "Give me a weapon," Cox gasped. "I want Francisco as much as you do." They moved together toward the back of the room, where Francisco was trying to restore order among his disintegrating organization. The man who'd killed Paige looked genuinely shocked at how quickly his empire was collapsing. "Idiots!" Francisco screamed. "Rex Townsend is the enemy, not each other." But it was too late. The room had erupted into a full-scale gunfight, with Francisco's own people hunting each other through the smoke and darkness. Years of criminal partnership dissolved into savage competition for survival. Francisco spotted Rex approaching and raised his weapon. "You destroyed everything I built." "You destroyed it yourself," Rex replied coldly, "when you decided murder was acceptable business practice." Their gunfight was brief and decisive. Francisco had relied on others for violence too long. His reflexes were slow, his shooting stance amateur. Rex's military training gave him every advantage. Francisco's shot went wide, shattering a window. Rex's shot found its target, dropping Francisco to the ground with a wounded leg. Rex approached the fallen man, weapon trained on his chest. Around them, the gunfight was winding down as Francisco's associates either fled or fell. Through his earpiece, Rex could hear police sirens approaching. "You killed my wife," Rex said quietly. Francisco laughed, even through his pain. "Your precious Paige wasn't the innocent victim you think she was. She was stealing from her clients, laundering money through fake renovation contracts. I offered her a partnership. She chose betrayal instead." "You're lying." "Am I?" Francisco pulled out his phone, showing Rex a series of photographs. "These are bank records from Paige's business account. Every renovation she charged was inflated by 30%. She kept the difference." Rex studied the photos, his trained mind analyzing the financial data. The evidence was compelling, but something felt wrong. "Even if that's true," Rex said, "it didn't justify murder. She was going to expose my entire operation to save herself." Francisco's composure finally cracked. "Everything I built, destroyed because your wife got cold feet." Rex saw the truth in Francisco's desperate rage. Paige had discovered his criminal network and tried to extract herself by gathering evidence. Francisco had killed her to protect his empire, then fabricated evidence of her guilt to justify his actions. "The bank records are fake," Rex realized. "You created them after she was dead." Francisco's expression confirmed Rex's deduction. The photographs were sophisticated forgeries, probably created by Edmund Vasquez under duress. Sirens grew louder outside the compound. Rex could see police lights through the shattered windows. "The police will be here soon," Rex told Francisco. "You're going to confess to killing Paige. And if I don't," Rex's expression was colder than Francisco had ever seen. "Then I'll make sure you don't live to see a trial." Chapter 8. Justice. The next few minutes passed in controlled chaos as SWAT teams surrounded the compound. Rex made sure Detective Cox was positioned near the evidence they'd gathered, while Francisco lay bleeding from his leg wound. "This is Seattle Police. Everyone drop your weapons and come out with your hands visible." Most of Francisco's surviving associates surrendered immediately, finally understanding that their criminal empire was finished. A few tried to fight, but they were quickly overwhelmed by superior numbers and training. Rex holstered his weapon and helped Detective Cox to his feet. "Can you walk?" "I'll manage." Cox looked around the destroyed room, taking in the bodies and evidence. "Hell of a thing, Rex. Francisco's entire organization destroyed in one night." Through the smoke and debris, Rex could see Francisco trying to crawl toward a dropped weapon. Rex stepped on Francisco's wrist, pinning his hand to the floor. "Going somewhere? You think this ends anything?" Francisco gasped. "I have associates in 3 countries. People who owe me favors. This isn't over." Rex knelt beside Francisco, his voice low enough that approaching police couldn't hear. "You're right. It's not over. Because I'm going to make sure everyone knows you murdered an innocent woman to protect your criminal empire. Your associates will abandon you. Your clients will disappear, and you'll spend whatever time you have left looking over your shoulder." Francisco's eyes widened as he realized the implication. Rex wasn't just seeking legal justice. He was promising a different kind of vengeance. "You can't threaten me," Francisco whispered. "There are laws." "Laws?" Rex's smile was terrifying. "You killed my wife and laughed about it. The only law that matters now is the one that says I get to watch you lose everything." SWAT officers reached their position, ordering everyone to the ground. Rex complied, allowing himself to be zip-tied and searched while maintaining eye contact with Francisco. Detective Cox, despite his injuries, took charge of the scene. This is Detective Cox, badge number 4472. The suspect, Francisco Garcia, is wanted for murder conspiracy in the death of Paige Townsend. As paramedics treated Francisco's leg wound, he tried one last desperate play. Detective, Rex Townsend attacked us. He's the criminal here. But Cox had Carrie Landry's wire recordings, documenting Francisco's confession to ordering Paige's murder. Combined with the evidence Rex and Gustavo had gathered, Francisco's guilt was undeniable. Francisco Garcia, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, money laundering, and racketeering, Cox announced. You have the right to remain silent. As Francisco was loaded into an ambulance under police guard, Rex caught a glimpse of his expression. The arrogant criminal mastermind was gone, replaced by a broken man who finally understood he'd lost everything. Carrie Landry emerged from her hiding place in the compound's kitchen, where she'd taken shelter during the gunfight. She was shaken but unharmed. Is it over? She asked Rex. The criminal part is over, Rex replied. Francisco's organization is finished. His associates are either dead, arrested, or running for their lives. Carrie nodded gratefully. Thank you. For my daughter, for all of us, he threatened. Rex was released after giving his statement to investigators. The evidence against Francisco was overwhelming. The dashcam audio, Carrie's wire recordings, financial documents, and testimony from multiple witnesses. But as Rex drove home through Seattle's early morning streets, he knew his personal war with Francisco was just beginning. Chapter 9. The Last Laugh. 3 months later, Rex Townsend sat in a federal courthouse as Francisco Garcia's trial reached its conclusion. The prosecution had built an overwhelming case, documenting not just Paige's murder, but Francisco's entire criminal enterprise. Francisco looked haggard and defeated, his expensive suits replaced by an orange jumpsuit. His legal team had attempted every possible defense, but the evidence was too comprehensive to dismiss. Has the jury reached a verdict? Judge Carolina Fisher asked. We have, Your Honor. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree, how do you find? Guilty. Francisco showed no emotion as the guilty verdicts continued. Money laundering, racketeering, witness intimidation, guilty on all counts. He was facing life in prison without possibility of parole. Rex felt a measure of satisfaction, but his campaign against Francisco wasn't finished. The legal system had provided justice, but Rex wanted something more personal. After the sentencing, Rex visited Francisco in the federal detention center. The man who'd once commanded a criminal empire now sat in a small concrete cell, awaiting transfer to maximum security prison. Come to gloat, Francisco asked when Rex entered the visiting room. I came to give you an update, Rex said pleasantly. Your associate Tyler Lloyd was found dead in his cell yesterday. Apparently, word got out that he was cooperating with federal investigators. Francisco's face went pale. In prison, being labeled a snitch was a death sentence. That's unfortunate, Francisco managed. Russell Costa is in witness protection, but he's had 3 attempts on his life. Someone leaked his location to your former associates. Rex leaned forward slightly. I wonder who could have done that. Francisco was beginning to understand. Rex hadn't just destroyed his criminal organization. He was systematically eliminating everyone who'd worked with Francisco, using their own paranoia and violence against them. You can't do this, Francisco whispered. Do what? I'm just sharing information. What your former partners do with that information is their choice. Rex's smile was cold. Although I have to admit, it's interesting how quickly criminals turn on each other when they feel threatened. Over the following weeks, Francisco watched his entire world collapse from his prison cell. Edmund Vasquez died in a car accident that looked suspicious to anyone who understood Francisco's history. Jesse Rollins was found beaten to death in an alley, apparently the victim of a robbery gone wrong. Each death was technically unrelated to the others, but Francisco recognized the pattern. Rex was hunting down everyone connected to Paige's murder, using their own criminal connections and enemies to eliminate them. The final blow came 6 months into Francisco's sentence. He received a letter with no return address, containing a single photograph. The image showed Paige's grave, covered in fresh flowers. Standing beside the headstone was Rex Townsend, no longer the broken widower Francisco remembered. He looked focused, determined, and completely at peace. On the back of the photograph, Rex had written a simple message. She knows justice was served. Sleep well, Francisco. Francisco crumpled the photograph, finally understanding the true scope of his defeat. Rex hadn't just sought legal justice. He dismantled Francisco's entire life, eliminated his associates, and ensured he would spend his remaining years in isolation and fear. The man who'd laughed while Paige Townsend died had learned there were consequences for that kind of cruelty. Rex had promised Francisco would lose everything, and he'd kept that promise with methodical precision. As Francisco lay on his narrow prison bunk that night, listening to the sounds of violence echoing through the cell block, he realized Rex had achieved something worse than revenge. He'd created justice that would last forever. Francisco Garcia had murdered an innocent woman and destroyed countless lives in building his criminal empire. Now he would spend whatever time he had left watching that empire's consequences catch up with him, one death at a time. Rex Townsend had won more than a legal victory. He'd proven that some people, the truly dangerous ones, never forget and never forgive. Francisco had bet his life on intimidation and violence, but he'd underestimated the quiet fury of a man who'd lost everything that mattered to him. In the end, Rex Townsend had the last laugh after all. Epilogue. 5 years later. The morning sun filtered through the windows of Rex Townsend's new office in Portland, Oregon. Gone was the sterile corporate atmosphere of his Seattle headquarters. This space felt warmer, more personal. Photographs of Paige lined one wall, not as shrines to the dead, but as celebrations of a life well lived. Rex had moved to Portland 18 months after Francisco's trial, needing distance from the memories that Seattle carried. Townsend Security Consulting had evolved too, shifting focus from corporate protection to something more meaningful. His client roster now included domestic violence shelters, witness protection programs, and families threatened by organized crime. People like Carrie Landry, who needed protection from predators who believed violence was a business tool. At 41, Rex had found something he'd never expected after Paige's death: purpose beyond revenge. A knock at his door interrupted his morning routine. Gustavo Velasquez entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee and looking remarkably unchanged despite the years. Their partnership had formalized after Francisco's downfall, combining Rex's strategic mind with Gustavo's investigative expertise. Morning briefing, Gustavo announced, settling into the chair across from Rex's desk. Carrie Landry called. She wants to expand the hotel security contract to cover her new properties in Vancouver. Rex smiled. Carrie had rebuilt her business empire on a foundation of legitimate success, no longer vulnerable to the kind of predators Francisco had represented. Her hotels now employed several families who'd escaped from criminal organizations, offering them fresh starts and honest work. Approved. What else? Detective Cox sent an update from Seattle. Francisco's federal appeals were denied again. He's officially serving life without parole at ADX Florence. Rex nodded, but felt no satisfaction at the news. Francisco Garcia had become irrelevant to his life, a problem solved and forgotten. The true victory wasn't Francisco's imprisonment. It was the lives Rex had helped rebuild in the aftermath. There's more, Gustavo continued, his expression growing serious. We received an inquiry from a woman in Miami. Her husband was murdered by his business partner, and she thinks the police aren't taking it seriously enough. Rex studied the file Gustavo handed him. The case details were eerily familiar. A successful businessman killed in what authorities had ruled an accident, a grieving spouse convinced of foul play, and law enforcement focused on easy answers rather than uncomfortable truths. Angela Martinez, Rex read from the file. Her husband ran a construction company. His partner claimed he fell from scaffolding, but she found evidence of financial irregularities. Sound familiar? Rex closed the file, set up a meeting, but make it clear we're investigators, not vigilantes. We find evidence. We turn it over to proper authorities. It was a distinction Rex had learned to maintain carefully. The line between justice and revenge was thinner than most people realized, and crossing it changed you in ways that couldn't be undone. He'd walked that line with Francisco and survived, but he wouldn't recommend the journey to others. Gustavo left to make the arrangements, and Rex returned to his morning routine. At 10 a.m., he had a standing appointment that had nothing to do with business. The Portland Veterans Hospital was a 20-minute drive from his office. Rex had been volunteering there for 3 years, working with combat veterans struggling with PTSD and survivor's guilt. It was therapy for him as much as service to others, talking to men and women who understood the weight of violence and loss. Rex, Dr. Audrey Fisher waved from the hospital entrance. Your group is waiting. Dr. Fisher ran the Veterans Counseling Program, a woman in her 50s who dedicated her career to helping damaged soldiers find peace. She'd been skeptical when Rex first volunteered, questioning whether someone seeking his own healing could help others find theirs. Time had proven her concerns unfounded. Rex's experience with grief and his methodical approach to problem-solving made him uniquely effective with veterans who'd lost faith in traditional therapy. Morning, everyone. Rex addressed the circle of 6 veterans gathered in the hospital's group therapy room. Who wants to start today? For the next 2 hours, Rex listened to stories of loss, guilt, and the struggle to find meaning after trauma. He shared his own experiences selectively, focusing on lessons learned rather than details of revenge achieved. One veteran, a young Marine named Tyler who'd lost his entire squad in Afghanistan, was struggling with survivor's guilt and thoughts of self-harm. I keep thinking I should have died with them, Tyler said quietly. What's the point of being here if they're not? Rex had heard similar words from his own mouth in the months after Paige's death. The point, he said carefully, is that survival gives you the chance to honor their memory through how you choose to live. That sounds like therapist bullshit. Maybe. Or maybe it's the difference between dying with them in spirit and living for them in practice. Rex leaned forward. I lost someone too. For a while, I thought my only choice was between revenge and surrender. But there was a third option I didn't see initially, which was building something better from the ruins they left behind. After the group session, Rex drove to his final appointment of the day, one that had become sacred ritual over the past 5 years. Paige's grave overlooked Elliott Bay from a hilltop cemetery in Seattle. Rex made the drive from Portland every month, not out of morbid obsession, but from a need to report progress. Today, he brought news she would have appreciated. We helped another family this week, he told her headstone, setting fresh flowers beside the granite marker. The Hendersons in Tacoma. Their daughter was being stalked by an ex-boyfriend the police couldn't touch. We convinced him to find a new hobby. Rex had learned to talk to Paige naturally, sharing both victories and struggles as if she were still there to offer advice. The conversations weren't about clinging to the past. They were about carrying the best parts of their relationship forward. Gustavo thinks I should start dating again, he continued. Says you'd be furious if I spent the rest of my life alone. He's probably right, but I'm not ready yet. Maybe someday. The truth was more complicated. Rex had met women over the past 5 years who interested him. Dr. Fisher actually had made her availability subtly clear. But building new relationships required emotional vulnerability that felt dangerous after losing Paige so violently. As the sun set over Puget Sound, Rex shared the day's real news. Francisco's appeals were denied. He'll die in prison, forgotten by everyone except the families he destroyed. I thought you'd want to know it's finally, completely over. A gentle breeze stirred the flowers on Paige's grave, and Rex chose to interpret it as approval. The drive back to Portland gave Rex time to reflect on how dramatically his life had changed. 5 years ago, he'd been consumed by rage and the need for revenge. Today, he ran a successful business that protected innocent people while finding personal healing through service to others. The transformation hadn't been easy or automatic. Rex had spent 2 years in therapy with Dr. Fisher, learning to process grief without destroying himself in the pursuit of justice. He discovered that revenge could be a tool for closure, but only if it led to something constructive rather than simply more destruction. Francisco Garcia's criminal empire was indeed dead, its survivors either imprisoned, dead, or scattered to the winds. But more importantly, the network of businesses and families Francisco had terrorized were thriving under legitimate leadership. Carrie Landry's hotel chain employed over 200 people, many of them refugees from criminal organizations. Edmund Vasquez's daughter had graduated from college and worked as a victims' rights advocate. Even Jesse Rollins' family, the man had left behind a wife and 2 children, received anonymous financial support that would continue until the children reached adulthood. Rex had learned that true victory wasn't just destroying your enemies. It was building something better from what they tried to destroy. His phone rang as he crossed the Oregon border. Detective Cox, calling from Seattle. Rex, got some news you'll want to hear. That Miami case your partner called about? I ran some background checks. The business partner has connections to a trafficking network we've been investigating. Federal involvement? FBI's taking over next week. But they could use someone with your expertise for the family protection angle. Rex smiled. Send me the details. We'll be on a plane tomorrow. As he hung up, Rex realized something that would have surprised his younger self. He was looking forward to the challenge, not for the satisfaction of destroying another criminal, but for the opportunity to help